Hello, good morning, class. There is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. This statement from the Bible informed a lot of the ways that early medieval Europe tried to improve the status of women in comparison with the earlier Roman Empire. There was a lot of ways that this statement influenced the laws of Spain, of France, and of the Eastern Roman Empire, which continued after the fall of Rome. Today I'm going to talk to you about medieval women's rights by discussing some early advocates for female equality, the effects they had on medieval law, and some opportunities that were available for the advancement of early medieval women. Let's begin with an early advocate for women, with a few of them. Because of time constraints, I'm only going to go through one, but I had four that I wanted to go through. One of them was Empress Theodora. She was a daughter of a bear trainer, which was not as cool as it sounds. She became an erotic performer in the Eastern Roman Empire and eventually married the emperor, where she converted to Christianity, and she actually influenced a lot of the emperor's social reforms. The Emperor Justinian's laws are well known for assisting women and helping them to attain a better status compared to the pagan Romans. Another woman who was helpful to women was Saint Scholastica. She was an early founder of religious orders for women and founded some of the earliest schools for women and girls. The one that I really want to talk to you about today is Saint Adamnan, who lived in Ireland from 628 to 704. He was an early champion for female equality. When he became a monk, his mother rebuked him for not doing anything to help women. He asked her wherein he had failed in his duty, and she answered, because he had not liberated the women of Ireland. This statement was very influential on his life. He prayed and fasted for 8 years for an end to the subjugation of women in Ireland and Britain, stood before 8 kings of Ireland, demanding better treatment for women, and they refused him for 8 years. But according to Patriarch Column of the Catholic world, he finally obtained for women the right to half the property in a marriage, which was a big advancement for them. Now that we know about one of the early advocates for women, let's see what effect some of these advocates had for women's rights. In the Eastern Roman Empire, the husband of Empress Theodora was Emperor Justinian, and his law, the Justinian codes, were the basis for the laws of the Eastern Roman Empire for 1,000 years. His novel 21, which is what he called his laws, that were introduced as what he called novels. They were just short statements. The one on women said this: "The custom of barbarians is that men only can inherit the property of their parents, brothers, and sisters. Other nations, too, have contempt for nature and a low regard for women, as if they were not made by God. But we ordain by this imperial law that no difference shall be made between male and female. The Armenians belong to our empire now and owe obedience to us. Therefore women shall not be deprived by them of the equality which they enjoy among us, but our laws shall apply equally to all." A couple of other laws that helped women in the Western Roman Empire were the Visigothic Code, which was enforced in Spain, and the Ripuarian law, which was enforced in part of France and part of Germany. France and Germany were not separate countries at the time. They were partially combined. The Spanish law, the Visigothic Code, said, "A woman shall inherit equally with her brothers the property of their father or mother, of their grandparents on the paternal and the maternal side, as well as that of their brothers and sisters." This law allowing equal inheritance rights would prove beneficial later in the Middle Ages, when property rights were the basis for all law and government. In France, King Saint Sigebert III was the ruler of the French province of Austrasia, which included part of modern France and modern Germany. In 650 AD, he passed a law reflecting his wish for female equality, and this is what he said: "An ancient but unjust custom is observed among us, which directs that sisters should have no part of the paternal estates with their brothers. But I, considering this an injustice, and knowing well, my dear children, that the Lord gave you to me so that I should love you with equal love, I institute you, my dearest daughter, my legitimate heir with your brothers, in order that you should have a part no less than theirs in my land and goods." Now that we know some of the early advocates for women, let's look at what opportunities they had. Now that we know about some of the how medieval laws looked at women, let's look at some opportunities women had for social improvement. One option they had was the convent school. Early in the Middle Ages, schools were founded for women and girls that were some of the first examples of schools of that kind. The oldest may be St. Ita's school, who founded a school for girls in 570 AD. Another option they had was abbeys. These were larger religious orders for women that were not always just for religious orders like nuns. A lot of times secular women and noble women would join these groups as well as sort of women's foundations. One of them is called the Quedlinburg Institute, which was founded in the reign of Emperor Otto the Great. And he was trying to start up a renaissance of great learning, and he founded an establishment for women to learn the literary arts. One woman who graduated from a school at that time called the Gandersheim Abbey was named Roswitha, and she was the first playwright since early Roman times, and she was a female. She wrote some really wonderful plays that, when they are still performed today, earn great awards. Another option they had for improvement was the feudal inheritance laws. When a person had an estate that had tenants on it, or what are known as serfs, that was called a feud back then, the estates were, and those were passed on as property. Because of the laws that I mentioned earlier, women were able to inherit those laws and gain a lot of control in Europe. One final option they had was parliament. A lot of the abbesses who were in charge of these women's institutes were actually granted a role on parliament or on the imperial diet of the Holy Roman Empire, where laws and policies were decided for the entire, for all of Europe. And so actually some of the people on those were women, which I think is really amazing. They actually had a vote and a voice and membership on an imperial council. In conclusion, we've looked at some of the ways that women's status was improved in early medieval Europe. They had a good religious position, improved property rights. They had, in some cases, rule of land and political power through parliament or through being an empress. Although women have not always had all the rights they have now, there were efforts to improve women's status in early medieval Europe, and they were built on the ideal set forth in the Bible: there is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Thank you.